Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. I'm Mary Johnson. I will be facilitating today, along with Miss Laura McCletty. And by the way, she is recuperating from foot surgery, so she'll be out for a couple more Tuesdays, okay? Carlenia Ivory Canty, Jackie Edwards Walton, Nathalie McGarrett, she's our timekeeper. And she'll keep the time for us. We have Mr. Winston Robinson. We have Steve Johnston, who is our website editor, along with Shay Abdullah, Gary Young, and that's it for today. Okay? Oh, good morning. Hey. Okay, wait a minute. Do we have any first timers with us today? Okay, we do. So we're going to start with this.
We're going to have a prayer first.
Oh yeah, this is we always open with a prayer. I'm going to ask Boris, would you please grace us with a prayer, and then we'll start with this young man.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me first of all say I'm a Georgia High School graduate. And I got recruited to do the prayer because I graduated from seminary last year, but I'm not a pastor. But let's go to the Lord in prayer. God, we thank you for another beautiful day to gather, to reflect upon your goodness and grace. God, as we think about the miracle of Easter and the resurrection, may we continue to work in the community in this day and forever, to resurrect lives, to resurrect communities, and to resurrect your love. In the name of all that is holy, amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to let our first timers introduce themselves, and we're going to start with our youngest one.
Hello, my name is Blake Garvey Robinson, the son of Winston Robinson, and I am very happy to be here.
Train them up in the way they should go.
Good morning again. I'm Boris. I grew up in Optimus Park, a few streets over, and I remember when this was a library.
Yes.
So I'm at home. But I'm the Director of Economic Development and Community Engagement at Johnson C. Smith University.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody good this morning. I'm Rodney McGill. I've been watching y'all for years. Decided to come down here this morning, see what was going on. I'm the Executive Director for the Save Our Children movement. We do after schools and summer camps throughout the city since 2014. Good to meet y'all.
Welcome.
Hey y'all, my name is Rachel Davis. I'm a real estate developer down in South Charlotte, and I actually recently just got back from Everest Base Camp, and I've been doing a lot of dabbling in affordable housing and not really going full throttle into it. And tell you what, when you spend 12 days, 10 hours a day in your thoughts, you start having some conversations with yourself about like, what am I really doing to help the community? So I wanted to come to this meeting. Shay had mentioned that this would be a great place to start meeting people so that I can start adding value to what's already getting done.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Zanetta. I am not a native to Charlotte. I am originally from Wilmington. I am here by way of this man here. I have been trying to get here for a while, been seeing the postings and stuff. I've been in Charlotte for about 7 years. I work in logistics and supply chain with a biology degree, but it's I am happy to be here, get more involved with the city I live in, get more history on the real Charlotte, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other first timers? Okay, we do want to welcome Dr. Thomas Moore back. He's our musician, and keep him in our prayers. He lost his mother several weeks ago, and we understand. Okay. Okay, so I do want to ask everyone to silence their phones. We do, this is our moment of silence. We're going to silence our phones so that everyone is not looking at you when yours rings, okay? Okay, today, and just keep in mind that our forum runs from 8:30 until 10 o'clock, but we do pause about 9:45 to take announcements, so you can hold your announcements to that time. You're gonna have questions, so make sure that you raise your hand, and I will, after they make their presentation, and then I will call on you in the order that you raise your hand, okay? We'll do it that way. We are honored today to have two first, we call them firsters, in Charlotte. We have Miss Fannie Watermann, and she was the first African-American student to attend Garinger High School. And we also have Miss Dorothy Scoggins, and she was the first African-American student to attend Harding High School, which is, if you all don't know where Harding used to be, it is now Irwin Avenue Academic Center, or Irwin Avenue Elementary School. It's been several things, but it's right there. That was the original Harding High School. Okay, they went through a lot, and I understand what they went through because I went through it too, but not with them, Mine was in the 70s. But I'm going to let them tell their stories, and then you will be able to ask questions, okay? And when you are talking, hold the mic up because we have a streaming audience, and they need the mic. They need to hear you through the mic. Okay, so without further ado, I'll let you all get started. Ms. Counts, you want to start?
As Mary said, my name is Dorothy Scoggins. I'm a Charlottean because my family moved to Charlotte when I was 4 years old. I lived on the west side most of my life, on the campus of Johnson C. Smith University. My father was a professor there, and so I was one of 4 students in 1957 that attempted, I say, to change the education system in this country. It came about as a result of the late Kelly Alexander, who was then the president of the NAACP, and he approached 20 families in Charlotte to see whether or not they would be making an application for their for their children to attend predominantly white schools. Of course, my family was one of them. And so my father and mother made application for 3 of us. 3 of us were in CMS schools. I was going into high school as a sophomore. I had a brother who was a senior in high school, and my younger brother was in elementary school. So out of the 3 of us, I was the one that was accepted. Of the 20 families, the 5 families were accepted by the Board of Education. And of those 5 families, it ended up 4 families. One of the families had 2 siblings, Gus Roberts and his sister Gavard, and then there was Dolores Huntley. And Gus was a senior in high school at Central High School, and his sister was in middle school. Dolores was in middle school, and I was the other high school student. As I said, this was September the 4th, 1957, And of course, those of you that are in here remember those times. When I was informed that I would be attending Hardy, I had just returned from a Presbyterian conference in Grinnell, Iowa. And of course, as I said, this was in 1957, and going to Iowa was also an experience. It was on the college, Grinnell College, and I was there with a group of students from Charlotte and Concord for a week. I ended up being assigned in the room with a white student, a young lady from Robertson, Illinois. And that was an experience. And I think that experience for me was good that I had it at that time, because it gave me a sort of an idea of what I was going to expect when I went to Harding after I got back home. I realized that was really an experience. You can imagine living with someone, especially when she told me that I was the first Black person that she had ever been around. She came from a small farming town outside of Chicago. So when I came back to Charlotte, my parents told me that I had been accepted to go to Harding, and that I came from a family of educators. Not only was my father, as I said, a professor, but I have a long line, aunts, uncles, all. So education was something that was stressed for me as a child growing up. Preparing to go to Harding, I think a lot of what happened prior to that first day was that my parents were trying to prepare me, but at the same time they were trying to protect me. Things were going on that I was not aware of. Phone calls, coming up in the yard at night, and leaving things on the porch and those kinds of things. That first day, that morning, when I got up, as we always do, having breakfast, and my father being a minister, having prayer, and of course, Dr. Edwin Tompkins, if you have seen the pictures, Dr. Edwin Tompkins was a colleague of my father's at the university. He came by the house and he said to him, "Is there anything I can do?" He said, "Why don't you just ride with me? I'm not sure what's going to happen when we get there." So in that picture, a lot of people think that that's my father, but it's not. It's Dr. Tompkins, who was a professor at the university and dean of the theological seminary. So when we got to Harding that morning, the streets were barricaded. And my father could not, and that's at the corner of 5th Street and Sear, and they could not let me, let him drive the car down to the entrance of the school, which was about 2 blocks. So he asked Dr. Tompkins to please walk with me while he found some place to park. So that was a 2-block walk for me. But one thing that I remember that my father said, "You are inferior to no one. Hold your head up high. You can do anything that you want to do." And those are the words that I carried with me as I took that 2-block walk. The streets were lined with students, adults. I'm sure there were people from the community. And at that time, there were houses that lined that street. And they were on the yard, on the porch, in the street. Back then, there was a woman, her name was Warlick, and she started a White Citizen Council. And she was there at Harding. But they had had meetings, and they said that, they were trying to be able to keep these Black students out of the schools. But she came to Harding. And as I was walking, naturally I was being pushed, shoved. They had signs that says go back to Africa using the N-word. Then of course things were thrown at me, but the most humiliating thing was she told the girls to spit on her, and they did. So by the time I got to the door, I tell people, I kept my eyes on the door of the auditorium. And I said, if I can get through to that door, everything was going to be okay. And so by the time I got to the door, you can imagine somebody spitting on you. And the hem of my dress by the time I got there. And that dress was made by my grandmother. My grandmother was a seamstress, and every year from the time I was in first grade, she always made me a dress to go to school for the first day of school. So once I got to the door and got inside and sat down, the abuse continued. The principal was standing up on the stage. He never said anything. None of the adults that were in the room said anything, so I sat down. I sat down by myself, and then finally he called for all sophomores to come forward. And I moved up and sat with my class. They dismissed us to our home class, and even when I went in that class to get my schedule and my books, then I was also ignored by the teachers. They stood there in a group talking to each other, but they never talked to me. It was only half day, and that was the rule at Charlotte-Mecklenburg then. You go to school first day, and you get your schedule, you get your books, and then you come home. So when I left to come home, the crowds were still outside as well. And some of you might know, but Dr. Reginald Hawkins, who was a big civil rights activist here in Charlotte at the time, a friend of my father's, also a former student of my father's, he was there waiting, and he was the one who escorted me to the car because, again, the car was not, my father was not able to come down and pick me up in the entrance of the school. So Dr. Hawkins came and picked me up and walked me to the car. So when I got home, of course, my parents asked me the question, how did it go? And I shared with them what happened on the inside. And the question was, well, what do you think? And I said, I'm going to go back. But once they get to know who I am, I really feel that things are going to be okay. This was on a Thursday. On Friday morning when I woke up, I had a very high fever. And my father called the doctor, and he suggested that I stay home and that I might be okay by Monday. So my father went to the school and said to Dr. Hawkins, who was the principal, that I would be back on Monday. And if there were any assignments, but he could give them to him, and I could work on those over the weekend. And shared with him that what had happened while I wasn't there on Friday. So of course I came back on Monday morning, and guess what? No grounds. Why? Well, we got rid of her. She's not coming back. And when I walked into the building, you can imagine how shocked they were to see me coming into the building. And it started all over again. Pushing, shoving in the hallways, stairwells, going to class. Of course, I was assigned to sit in the back of the class. Raised my hand. I was not recognized because I was not even there. So this went on Monday, and then on Tuesday, as I said, Tuesday it continued. And then on Wednesday, I met a young lady because she was a student too, her first year there. And so I thought, okay, now there's someone at least that will talk to me and maybe things will be okay. Because each day when I was home, my parents would ask me, and I would tell them all the things that happened. But on Wednesday, I was sitting in the cafeteria, and all of a sudden, a group of boys surrounded the table, and they spat in my food. I picked up my tray, put it on the conveyor belt, and walked outside. And that's when I ran into this young lady, and we sat out there on the lawn, and we talked. So I said to my parents when I went home on Wednesday, I said, you know, a lot of things are going on, but at the same time, I have to eat. They allowed you to come home at lunchtime as long as you were back for your afternoon classes. So I said, can someone pick me up tomorrow and bring me home? And so my dad said, somebody will be there. So on Thursday, when I was preparing to go home, I was standing in the hall at my locker, and all of a sudden, someone, a black boy raised hit me in the back of my back, and a sharp object hit me in the back of my head. And I turned around, and as all the things that happened to me when I was there, I'd always turn around and see, but it was a group, and you couldn't say they did it or they did it. But for me, the thing that I guess was most upsetting to me is that the administration did nothing. My locker was right down the hall from his office. And as they still do today, you stand in the hall and students are passing by. He saw the things that were going on, but he ignored it. So when that happened to me, I walked to the door, and to go out the door, and my father's car was sitting in the circle, and the back window was shattered, and my brother was sitting inside. That's the first time that I was afraid, because not only was it me that they were targeting, now they're targeting my family. So when I got home, of course, my brother said to me, he said, tell Dad what happened. And I shared the information with him, what had happened. We were in the hallway, and of course we talked about the car. And so my dad got on the phone, he called the superintendent, and at that time the superintendent was Superintendent Garringer. And he said to him, told him what had happened. He said, well, I'm not aware of anything. I checked with the schools each day, but nothing like this had been shared with me. He called the police department, the police chief, and he said, well, I'm not aware of anything. He said, I need to know whether or not my daughter is going to be safe. He said, I sent her to school to get an education, but at the same time, I need to know whether she's going to be safe. And the chief of police said, we cannot guarantee that. So, my father made the decision then. He talked to other family members, other people in the community, in terms of, he said that, you know, I know God, and God can take a lot, but I need to know that my daughter is going to be safe. And she shouldn't have to deal with this on a daily basis, going to school to get an education, and continue to be harassed and not getting any support. So we called a press conference and told them that, you know, I would be withdrawn from Harding. And so the decision was made for me. I could have gone to West Charlotte, because that's where I was assigned to go. But it was important to my parents that I have an experience in an integrated environment. I had relatives that lived in a very suburban area of Philadelphia. It's called Yaden, Pennsylvania. And he contacted Led and Verge and said, is it possible that Doc could come and stay with me for the rest of the year and go to school? So I moved to Pennsylvania, went to Yale for that year. It was a wonderful experience. I didn't have any issues at all. The only issue I had that I did not like being away from my family. And so at the end of the year, I said to my parents, is it possible that I could come home? And so they made arrangements for me, and I attended Allen High School in Asheville, North Carolina. It was built by the Methodist Church in Western North Carolina, because at that time, a lot of schools in that part of the country were not accredited for black students. And so I went to Allen my junior and senior year, and I graduated from there. And then, of course, I attended Johnson C. Smith University. I graduated with a degree in psychology and sociology. And then I went on for the career that I had for 40 years. Because what happened to me at Harding, I said at 15, whatever I do in life, I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen to another child. So my field was early childhood. I started that. The first job I had was working, and even assured me with that statement I just made. The first job I had, I worked in a center for abused and neglected children. And to see the kinds of things that people did to children, for me, said, that is what I need to do, is to advocate and be there for young children. Because these were children that were birthed through 6 years of age. So that was my focus. I retired in 2012. And I now I said when I retired that my focus was going to be on CMS, because I saw then the kinds of things that were going on in CMS. And so I focused my attention on 2 schools. And one is Bruns Academy, because it's a school for the children in my neighborhood. I live across the street from Johnson C. Smith University. And so the students in that community are assigned naturally to go to Bruns. And the other is University of Arts Academy. I'm a part of a group that's adopted those 2 schools and helping in terms of that. But also, when we talk about Garinger, in 2017, I applied and got a startup grant, and I had a mentoring program at Garinger for 15 young women. And those 15 young women, 13 of those 15 young women went on to college, have now graduated. One went into the military, went in the Air Force, and the other went to Central Piedmont. And now I have a mentoring program. It's the Dorothy Scoggins Mentoring and Social Justice Program. And that program is for students at West Charlotte, Harding, and Philip O'Berry. So that's how I have taken what happened to me 65 years ago and turned it around to be a servant in this community for our children.
Thank you, that was quite powerful. Okay, Ms. Watermann.
Good morning. Good morning. Wow, that was good. Thank you, Dorothy. Well, let me see, how do I start? A lot of mine is somewhat similar to what she had to say. But my journey started, I'll say, when I was 6 years old. There was a little brick wall in front of our house. I grew up in First Ward on North Long Street. And a lot of the children would sit out in front. I was the only girl in the block. And a lot of us would sit out in front, and a lot of the older people, you know how you say, well, what you gonna do when you grow up, little girl or little boy? What school do you want to go to? So Central Piedmont was 5 blocks down the street from me, right? And I could sit on that block, on that rail or whatever the thing is, and see the students coming up the street when they were out of school. And I said, well, those are school children, you know, in my mind. And so everybody on the little block with me, they say, well, I'm gonna go second ward. I'm going to go to West Charlotte. And I never gave the right answer. I said, I'm going to go to that school down there. It was just a school, as far as I'm concerned, you know. And they would laugh. And you can't go to that school down there. I said, what do you mean I can't go to that school down there? And I don't like to be told I can't. So I say, well, it's a school, but you can't go to that school down there. It never dawned on me why. Well, I did a little bit of time at Second Ward. I went a little while there, went a little while at Northwest Junior High School, because I wanted to go to West Charlotte where my brother went. But by that time, everything had changed. I couldn't go. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. He went, but I can't go. We're in the same house. But you know the boundaries and all that. Well, I didn't want to go to Second Ward. I wanted to go to West Charlotte. So when they approached me, the same committee was Dr. Scoggins, Mr. Alexander, and Gerson Stroud, and asked me if I would be willing to be a pioneer. And I said, sure, you know, I want to go to that school down the street. And my dad always said I was the most defiant child he had, so I said, okay. So we had to have conferences, and they had to talk to my parents and so forth and see that we were aboard, you know, on board and everything. My dad was a carpenter and an architect. And so we didn't have any problems there. Well, it's ironic though that when the time came for me to enter a school, how about it was Central High School, the same school down the street that everybody said I couldn't go to. So I entered that school on the heels of Gus Roberts' graduation. He was a senior and I was going in. I was 15. And I'll probably skip around a lot, so just bear with me, because it's so much. But I went to Central. My dad wanted to take me to school, which was only about 5 blocks down the street, and I told him no, I wanted to walk. And I did, and the streets, of course, they were lined too with my neighbors and the cameras and policemen. And so I could see out the corner of my eye this little green Ford. My dad was just trailing me, you know, in the back. But I just liked it. I said, okay, so he was there the whole time. But I really wanted to walk it by myself. So I did that, and when I got there to the steps, these 2 girls approached me and asked me if I was a new student, and I said yes. And one of them said something to the effect of some question about how could I have the nerve to do that. She didn't think she would be able to, and I just replied that, well, I just don't think you're any better than I am. And they looked at me and they, you know, just shuffled and whatever. So I said, well, you showed me to the office. They did. And went on to the office. I got my assignments and what have you. Going on, and you know, classes are already going on. So when I got to my geography class, which I love, the teacher was very, very determined that she was not going to teach a colored. That was the term they were using. And this was in 1958. They were using colored in all the camps and stuff like that. So she was just determined. She just was not going to teach me. And I'm like, what? So I sat on the front row. When we got our papers, she would just put the papers, just drop them, you know, and I'm like, well, these students behind me want their papers too. So for a few days or so, I picked them up, got my papers, and I put them back. But then I just got tired. This does not make sense. So the straw that broke the camel's back with her is when I walked in one day and she immediately erased the board and wrote up there, Africa, big letters. I said, okay, I'm in for it. Here we go. Here we go. So, you know, in the back of your mind, you just gotta think, okay, here we go. She said that in my country, she was from New Zealand, and I hope I'm not talking about anybody here, but she said in my country, we were told that all colors had tails like monkeys. And I said, what? She said, we was told that all students had tails like monkeys, and I had on a pair of jeans, and they had the zipper in the front, and I stood up, and I motioned. I said, would you like to see if I have a tail? Sit down, sit down. I said, no, I will not sit down. I got my books. This has gone on for a while. And I got my books, my little pocket book, and I walked out in the hallway. And at that time, as you notice, my name is Fannie, F-A-N-N-I-E, not F-A-N-N-Y. I was not allowed to use my name for 3 years because of the fact that they thought the word Fannie was the behind. That's why, I guess it's one reason I don't like my name, but it's my grandmother's name, so I kept it. But I'm like, what? So they suggested that I don't use that name. I said, okay. Well, so I was known as Dolores for 3 years. So when I went in the hallway, the assistant principal asked me, said, Dolores, why are you in the hallway? Because, you know, you had to have passes and so forth. And I told him, I said, I need to talk to somebody. All this time, I had not shed a tear. I had not even told my parents about that. I just held it in, just went on, determined that I was going to go on. And so I said, I need to talk to somebody. Had all my papers, and I told him how she had acted. Every paper was checked with a great big fat F, red F. She didn't check any of them. She just automatically got my paper. You know, she didn't go through anything. He hadn't been able to go through all my papers, plus all my family, except for my dad and mom, were educators. All my sisters, my cousins, everybody. So I had them to check my paper. They said, you have an A average. I said, well, I didn't think anything was wrong. And she came out of the office and told him, said, she has an A average. So they dismissed her or whatever you do for a while or whatever. And I didn't have to deal with her any longer for a while. I think she came back in my senior year. That was my maybe junior year that I was going through that with her. Anyway, needless to say that God did provide a lamb in the bush. Because the assistant principal, they didn't know, but my dad had drawn house plans for him. So they didn't know it, but he was there watching over me the whole time. And he said, and he and the principal, oh, Mr. Sanders, says, this will not go on. We will not have this. We will not tolerate this. And they didn't. Okay, so that was the worst part of the teaching that went on. Because all my other teachers were relatively nice to me. You know, they were nice. Everybody was nice. But they were afraid for some reason to really mingle with me. And it was like the parting of the Red Sea when I'd walk down the hallway. They'd all just go to one side, to the other side or something like that. I'm like, what in the world? So I said, okay, well, I got to get my class. And I go to my class. And whatever. I found out later from a good friend of mine who was a senior there. He He's white, of course, and he has moved to Florida, but he became a good friend of mine through jobs. And he said they did that because they had been told by their parents that if they touched me, they would turn black. How ignorant is that? You know, and I thought, what? Yes. And they would just, I mean, just like the Red Sea, and I just went right on through. I'm like, what is going on? But anyway, when I found that out, I said, gosh, that's ignorant. But anyway, we went on with that. And then there was a guy, if any of you have ever been to Central Piedmont, you know those doors that they have are just awfully hard and heavy. There was a guy who was also determined not to go to school with me. I was in the library, and the bell rang, and I looked up, and I got my books, and for some reason, I looked at him. He hurried up, and got outside those doors. Well, they had mirrors in the doors, so I went to the door, getting ready to go out, and he had hid behind one of them, getting ready to knock me down with the door, you know. And I saw him, and I just pushed it real hard, and it knocked him down. And so that, right at that time, the other students, I guess they had gotten kind of tired of all this mess. They started clapping. I said, oh, wow. So that made me feel a little bit better, but they were afraid to just really associate with me. And that's fine. I didn't go to school to do all that. I went not to necessarily get a better education. Like I said, I had a good one. I just wanted to see what was this difference that everybody was talking about. And there was a difference in the way things were. The students were, and the teachers were friends. They'd go outside and smoke together. I'm like, what? We wouldn't have done that. You know, some of them, and the way they were dressed was different. I'm so used to my teachers coming to school in their furs and their, you know, and looking, good. And I'm thinking, well, my teacher, my homeroom teacher, I love her dearly. She was very sweet to me. She had on house shoes. I thought, okay, you know, but it was just different. It's different. And the books, I guess you've heard of that, how Second Ward and West Charlotte got all of the old books. And it was true. I looked over in the corners. There were already these boxes, new boxes of books, new boxes of books. And over in the thing, in the corner were these raggedy boxes labeled Second Ward, West Charlotte, and whatever. So they were sending all those raggedy books over. I said, well, that part is true. But the teaching was good. It was good, but it wasn't something that, you know, I would say I went for. I went to make a difference. And I hope I did make a difference. And I tried to stay close to the fact that I had been approached and had given a task, and so I stayed with it. Well, got ready for graduation. They didn't want me to walk across the stage. I said, oh no, this is not happening. I earned this. And so they wanted to mail me my diploma. That wasn't happening. The same student that did not want me to go to school with them, when I got my ring, and this is a wonder if it even comes off, it's been on so long. But when I got my ring, it was too big for me, and I dropped it. And those cement steps, and I, of course, dropped those cement steps, and I got ready to get, he took his foot and just ground it. And until this day, my stone is messed up, I wouldn't change it. So he just ground it. And I said, okay. I picked it up, put it back in my little box. My parents had paid for it. And so I went on. They had these little tickets for graduation. Didn't want my family to be there, of course, you know, because I guess they figured it wasn't, you know, they're black and they're going to start a mess and whatever. And it was held in the great big, I always forget it, the big Methodist church, I think it is, downtown It's huge. Yes, it's a huge church. And my sister had come up from Augusta, she and her family, and my other sister from Charleston, South Carolina, and of course my parents. Of course, I wanted them there. And so some of them were able to go in, but the other ones had to, like those doors right there where they could look through. And I said, okay, but they were there, they were in the lobby. I said, well, all of these little put downs, you know, trying to keep me from going. And newspaper clippings will tell you how they tried to send me back. So second ward, I told them no, I wasn't going. So they said, well, Garinger at that time was like 16 miles from where we lived. So I never, to this day, I've never ridden a school bus. My dad took me, or either I rode the city bus. I got to school. And did that. They tried everything they could to keep me from going. And she spoke of eating. I have to eat. But I was afraid to eat or either drink a glass of water, a glass of water, because you have to go to the bathroom. They would tell me, well, you be careful if you go to the bathroom, because some of these girls could be hiding behind the doors and whatever. So I sit out front. There was a lady that lived in our neighborhood, worked in the cafeteria, and she would always look out for me. She'd give me a little sandwich or something. But I didn't really want to eat. I wanted to eat, but I didn't want to, so I'm afraid. So I would go outside. I sat in my cafeteria, which I thought was the prettiest thing. But I sat in there for a couple of times, and they throw spitballs, and they do this, and they do that, and I'm looking, eyes in the back of my head. And so I said, oh, this is not necessary. This is just not going to be it. So I'll sit out front, on the bench. I went through that. Met a few girls, couple of girls who kind of sort of wanted to be friends, but they were afraid of their friends and what they would say. Same with the guy who befriended me after he became actually a supervisor of mine. And he was asking me one day, he said, Fannie, he said, did you grow up in Charlotte? I said, I did. And he said, where? And I told him. And he said, what school did you go to? And I told him. He went, what? Huh? No. He said, I went to that school, and he said, and when the girl that I knew, there was a girl there, he said, but said she was a pretty young girl, and he said, her name was Dolores. I said, that's me. He said, what? I said, yes, I got my yearbooks, which I brought today. They're on the back if anybody wanted to see them, on those tables. And he said, what? And we became friends, and we just started talking. He said, you got to be kidding, and da-da-da-da-da. And he's such a different person, because he said, I always wanted a black friend. He and say, really? So and I said, oh. He said, but my parents told me I couldn't have one. That's going on. Well, going on and on. So he said, he wrote a nice letter for me when they honored me a little while back. Last year, I think it was, Who's Who in Black Charlotte. And he talked about how he befriended me and all of this kind of stuff. Well, going forward, I'm sorry. Okay, when my daughter, I have two daughters. Let me see, 2 daughters, 4 grands, and 3 great grands. And so when she got ready to go to high school, what school did she go to? Garinger. Well, she said, Mom, come on. I went to PTA meeting, that's what they call it. So we went, and so she said, I want you to meet my teacher. Went down the hallway. Who?
We need to wrap
up
so we can get to questions.
Okay. Well, anyway, That was her teacher, the lady who was my geography teacher.
No.
Yeah. Yes. All right, so.
Small world.
Small world, yeah.
All right, man, thank you. Oh, man.
I mean, this is just, I'm just in awe of both of these ladies for all that they went through. Okay, we do have questions. I'm going to ask you to keep your question to 30 seconds. And if you want to ask one, or you can ask both, but we want to make sure that our questions are no more than 30 seconds, and try not to do commentary, but just ask your question. Okay, Winston is first. Oh, Ken, okay.
Dot, your grandmother's dresses that she made for you, the one in particular for Harding High School, is it in the Smithsonian yet?
No, of course, you know, I am in the African American Museum of Arts and Culture in DC. They asked me for the dress, but I didn't have it. But I will tell you, I have a replica. There's a black artist here in Charlotte, and he was commissioned by an attorney here in Charlotte to do a portrait of me to hang in his lobby. And what happened was, when that portrait was presented to me at the Mint, they also gave me a replica of the dress. So I have that.
Okay, thank you. Winston.
So, I'm gonna go ahead and say it for Mrs. Fannie Waterman's family. The reason black families won't hold for applause in graduation today is in protest. We are doing it for your family. We will cheer for our babies and not wait for the whole graduation class. My question is, was the juice worth the squeeze? Do you feel like after you endured all of these things and went through all of these things, did you feel like you had access to a better system? Both of you.
Well, I'll put it this way. I think my children had a better system as a result. I have a son and a daughter, and both of them graduated from East Mac. They went to Piedmont, in a very diverse environment. And so my daughter went on to Davidson, and my son went on to Johnson C. Smith. So I will say that if maybe not, my goal, hopefully, was to make it better for those to come behind me. So hopefully that happened as a result of it. Now, we may talk about today, but
Ms. Waterman, do you want to address that?
I would just say that I think that my children benefited because they did come up and they did go on and they have graduated high school, colleges. Their children have graduated high school, college. I have a grandson now that's graduated from Johnson C. Smith in May. And so I think it went well.
Okay, I'm next. I have a question for both of you. Have you encountered or spoke with any of those students that spit on you or did those things to you? Have any of them come to you and apologized, or have you had any?
well, when they had the 50th anniversary at Harding, there was a young man who was a senior at the time that I was there. His name was Woody Cooper. He contacted the Observer and said, is there any way that you could give me the contact information for God Counts? And they contacted me and to ask me if I could give him, if they could give him my information. I said, give him my email address. He sent me a letter, a thank you. And actually, he sent a letter of apology. Exactly, that's what it was. And asked me me if I could accept his apology for what happened. Woody and I met. We met at, we had dinner together. We went to a restaurant that I couldn't go to that he could. And his wife. And he and I developed a relationship over the years. We traveled this community, talking to churches, schools. But the other thing is, I don't know whether you all are aware of it, but in Freedom Park, there is what they call a forgiving bench. And he and I dedicated that bench together. He died. I went to see him. He was in hospice care. And I went to see him. The next morning, his wife Judy called me. And she said, I just want to let you know that Woody died. He was waiting for you to come. And so that was one relationship. Ironically, 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from a woman who said she was in my class at Harding. And the letter basically was, it wasn't necessarily an apology, but the letter was talking about her as a person. And she said, she said, I will have to admit that I was a racist. I still have racist tendencies, but I just wanted to let you know that over the years, as I think about what happened to you at Harding, I hope that my life will be better. So which means that she's the same age as I am, and I'm 83. So at least at 83 years old, at least she's being honest. And so that's the only other person.
You look amazing for 83. Just so you know.
But they know who they are. But they know who they are. They know who they are, the ones that, we got pictures of them, right? Okay, so Ms. Watermann? Nobody?
No, not really, because nobody, like I said, the guy who didn't want to go to school with me, I don't know where he is. There were 3 students that I don't know, but they knew me. They came up to me one time at a restaurant and they were apologizing, I guess, for the school of somewhat, but they knew me and I really don't remember them. I had to go home and get the book and I said, what are these people and who are these people? But they knew me. And one guy, actually, it's funny, he has a thumbnail, I guess, picture of me. He carries in his wallet. I said, are you crazy? So, but no.
Okay, we have Gary and then Carlene.
Good morning. I don't have anything to major minute, but Ms. Fannie, when you were speaking, you alluded to an individual named Gus something that was a senior when you were coming in at 15.
Right.
Can you explain a little bit more about the relevance to him with you coming in?
Okay, his name was Gus. It was Roberts. He was the first Black to graduate from Central High School. See, so Central turned into Garinger. But he was the first to graduate. So that's how, and he has died now. He went into the Army, and now he came out, and I went to his wake, and along with my music teacher from Garinger, because we went together, and that was very, very interesting.
Gus was one of the 4.
Gus was one of the 4 with me.
Okay, thank you. Carlene. Thank you for all that you're doing with CMS, and I'm aware of a lot of it. And even though they didn't ask me, I just want to say that it hurts. And I went through it 10 years later, and it still hurts. And what I went through was my parents chose. It was the Freedom Plan, and 5 of us were there, and the only African Americans. And as far as monkeys, we were in a car, and we were in Germany and all in the back seat because they were calling us monkeys, and they thought we had tails, Miss Fannie.
But if you wanted a seat, all you had to do was sit down beside a person and they would move. So you had the whole bench to yourself.
There you go.
And I've never been to a prom. I've never been to a class reunion. And I remember very distinctly the football players say something nice to the colored girl. And they say, hey, nigga. And that's what you remember. And you don't forget that stuff. You don't forget it. So it's an encounter that you don't forget. And that was I graduated in 1968. So it still is with you.
Well, when she talked about the tales, and I can tell you, I told you I went to this Presbyterian conference in Grinnell, Iowa. My roommate was white. And that was one of the things she asked me. And I noticed in the room she kept walking around me and looking. And I finally said to her, why are you looking at me? And she said, well, I was trying to see your tail.
Oh my God.
So I had, like, this is a you know about the Presbyterian Youth Conference.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I said, tail? And so she said, yeah, well, I was told that all Negroes have tails. And I said, if you want to, you can see my tail. I said, but it won't be one hanging from me, you know. But anyway, it was an education for her because a lot of other things came up that week that I was there. Same thing about rubbing against, can I rub your skin? Can I touch your hair?
Yes.
Can I do all these kinds of things? So, yeah.
Same thing.
Okay, we have the red top on here.
Good morning, and thank you all both for your sacrifice. My question to both of you is, what would you say about the state of segregation, desegregation, resegregation in our schools now, particularly the impact on Black children? From 1954 forward or 1970s forward. What is your honest analysis, I guess, is what I'm asking, particularly as it pertains to the well-being of Black children in schools today?
Unfortunately, I saw this coming, and I said years ago, 10 years or more, that I saw what was happening. A lot of people don't believe me. For me, personally, it bothers me that people like Fannie and myself and there are others made the sacrifice so that our children could have a better education. I don't like Fannie. Yes, I went to Black schools up until 8th or 9th grade. And I will say, I had excellent teachers. And at that time, Black teachers were required to have a 4-year degree and beyond. White teachers could get a 2-year degree and teach in our school system. So those were the differences there. But now to be able to see what is going on for our kids. And I appreciate those. I like Colleen, and of course I say myself, and those who are in the schools trying to help these kids in terms of learning. A lot of people put it all on the parents, but you have to realize the generation that a lot of these kids are coming from. So you can't put everything on the parent. So if it is, then what are you doing as a teacher or a system to be able to ensure that our kids have a better education? That's why I volunteer. I go in and do what I can to help our kids get a better education. The other part of it is, sometimes we hear the bad things that are going on at CMS, but we don't hear the good things that are going on. And the students who are graduating, and I was telling the group the other day, the mentoring group that I have 8 kids that are graduating now going to college. And I have one of those students who has gotten 10 acceptance letters of scholarships from Charlotte High School. Now he's chosen to go to Howard. But I have kids going to Howard, Morehouse, A&T, Bates College in Maine. So what I'm saying is, and I have said to journalists, you write about every bad thing that's going on in our schools, about what, and from elementary schools all the way up to Johnson State University. But you don't talk about the good things. So why don't you come in, and so we can all celebrate and talk about the good things that are going on. Now, I got off the subject of that. That's what I want people to know. That we've got some good kids. It's not all bad, but we have some good kids in our schools.
Love and peace, and just want to say thank you for your sacrifice. Just to affirm the question about the juice from the fruit, because I know my education experience would not have been at all pleasant without y'all's experience. I didn't have to go to school, people worrying about me being a monkey or afraid to touch me. So thank you for enduring that, and again, your sacrifice and courage. I'm curious on the timeline. I think I heard 1957 and 58. So did you two know of each other, hear of each other's stories, and what was the influence? And then also people in community, your peers. You said that, of course, you all didn't go to those schools to be better than anyone, but did your peers look at you as such, or did they support you in that?
Oh gosh, let me say this. I'll let you get on the part with the Well, talking about the community, I'm glad you said that the community and acceptance and so forth. When the day I came home, the very first day, I walked down those streets to go home. I said, thank God I made it. They said, you couldn't pray in school, you can't pray. But no, I prayed all day long. But when I turned that corner, and there was the houses, all the people were out there. This one lady, I was 15 years old. This one lady said, the papers call you Miss Watermann, but I call you Miss S.H. Grandma. I said, what? Now this was a neighbor, a friend. So I went home and I told my dad. We walked back to her house and you know, that wasn't very, whatever. But, my dad was a German, descent. So, but he told me, and I always remember this, that you don't need to have anybody else to validate you. You can validate yourself. And I never understood what he said at that time, you know. Now I know what he meant. But for you to say that to a child, why?
To answer your question, yes. Fannie is Presbyterian.
Yes.
And I am Presbyterian. So we grew up together. At one time, I was a member of the same church that she's a member of. So, you know, back in those days, a lot of our connections were through the church because we didn't have the opportunities to be able to do the things that kids have today. Her brother and my oldest brother were best friends. Yeah. So it was, you know, back then, the relationships were built around those kinds of things.
Right.
Okay, Donnell.
Okay.
Donnell and then Rachel.
All right. It could be to both of you, but you mentioned the forgiving bench, and one question is, what is your source of forgiveness that you've had to practice or show or walk through with all of what has happened? The other piece is, I attended a town hall meeting at Bruns Elementary School with an excellent tour led by the principal. Is it possible that you can invite the news media to go on that tour and to hear the strides that have been made at Bruns in the new school by the principal, who I know now is being reassigned to another school, so they're bringing in someone else. And then I know that the church, your father was a minister. What's the spiritual significance and importance of the church's role in what you all endured and how it occurred? I'm done.
With 3 questions. I know you only got one. I snuck it in.
And as far as the forgiving piece, a lot of that has to do with my teachings, Darnell, and my faith. When I received a letter from Woody and asked for forgiveness, I did respond back to him after 24 hours. I had to think about what I was going to say. But I said to him, I forgave you 50 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with who I am. I have strong faith, not only the teachings from my parents, but also from my grandparents. So that's the kind of environment that I grew up in. And your other question, I'll let Fannie. Well, I'm sure it's the same with you, because, you know, we grew up in that kind of environment. As I said earlier, the church was a strong piece of what our foundation. And sometimes I think in terms of young people don't have that today, you know, but that's how we were able to get through a lot, because of the fact that we knew we had that foundation from the beginning as young children growing up.
God has a mirror at Rachel.
Huh?
God has a mirror.
Oh, right. Well, yes, I've read Dr. Curry when he first came to Bruns. You know, my disappointment with CMS is that there's no sustainability or consistency a lot in administration. I moved in Billings, Smallwood in 2002. And I have been working with that school the entire time I've been there. And Colin, you can verify this with me, how many different principals have been at Bruns. Dr. Curry came 3 years ago. Dr. Curry came 3 years, I think it's 3.5 years ago, and has gone through the rebuilding of that school. A lot of people don't realize that Bruns Avenue Elementary School has such a strong history, because that's the school where Dr. Swan took his son and they denied him admittance. So that's where the Swan came about, and that's why a lot of you who are in school today came as a result of the lawsuit that came, which is the Swan case. So, good Daniel, that's a good point. And I do have some contact. And, but I want to say this, and I know this is kind of off the beaten path. Friday night, they had at the Carolina Theater, where those of us that are in here could not go. There's a white theater, and we could not go growing up. Friday night, there were reports that gave a performance at that theater. And I talked to one of the co-producers yesterday. They were invited. It's not that they went to them and asked, can we use this space? The person who's in charge of that theater asked them, why don't you do your performance here? It was a very diverse crowd, race, age, gender, and the bottom floor was full. Yesterday I found out that the man who had invited them to do it was fired. So I'm saying this in public because of the fact that I got back with them yesterday. I said, we can't stand for this. Now he's white, And I said, this has to do, I'm sure, with DEI, number one, but it also has to do with the people who have funding for that restoration of that theater. And they said in terms of, because what they did, the performance was amazing. Because the poets lived, they talked about areas. They lived in, maybe one of the poets lived in Brooklyn. So he talked about what Brooklyn growing up. Cherry, Biddleville. And so, but this is the kind of thing, this is 2025. Those of you that are young, young folk in here, realize that this is the kind of thing that we have to look forward to. So what I said to him is, I have somebody who is now a freelance writer who would love to take that on from Charlotte. And that's what needs to happen. So anyway, I'm just sharing that little piece with you, that those are the kinds of things that we're going to have to look forward to.
Okay, thank you, Rachel.
I want to respect the time because I know that
yes, we are very close.
Rather than ask a question, I think what I'm just going to say is thank you. Unlike wealth or health, the one thing we can't get back is time. So I just want to express tremendous gratitude for both of you ladies for coming today and telling the story. And I actually want to say something to Winston too, to say thank you. You taught me something today. I grew up in a military family. Time and listening to directions has been ingrained into me as a small child, and I've never understood why black families cheer during high school graduation. I joined the military, I did 8 years, my husband did 20, and I've always just been like, you're supposed to be quiet. Like, why are they quiet? So, candidly, like, we often criticize critical thinking in other people, not ourselves, and that was a moment today where I had to check, like, why I think something, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Absolutely. That was great, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
First of all, I can thank you. I was listening on my phone and I wanted to come in because this is just great history. But your reflections on where we are today in society and the things that are going on, how you feel about it, and any words of wisdom to get this next generation through this slice of our history.
Well, for one thing, I'm going to say that children, all of us, old, young, we're all children, we're all learning. So, but if you're in school, pay attention to your parents, pay attention to the teachers. They're there to help you to get along in life. They're not there to be necessarily be mean. You got some that are out of line, out of control. But just know what you're there for. You have a goal, so strive and try to reach it and go on, okay?
My thoughts are that it's time for us to get up and stop sitting there and saying, we have arrived, okay? So this is when I think in terms of people like Attorney White, Kelly Alexander, Julius Chambers, and all of the black leaders, Dr. Hawkins, that we had during that time, and brought people together so that we could have a better life, not just the education piece, but a better life. Where is that leadership today in our communities? So if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it for us. So I'm saying to all of you, young and old, I always look at the young folk, because you're the next generation from us, that you can't sit there and not do anything. You need to use your voice. And you need to speak up. It doesn't have to be ugly, But first of all, before you do it, you need to understand your history. Because you can't sit and talk about something to someone if you don't know it. And that's everybody. So, and I say, when I have done from Maine to California, talking to people, and my preference is to young people. And the reason why is because those are the ones who are going to do something about what's going on. So we have to encourage them. If we want change, we're going to have to support them, but we ourselves are going to have to do something. We can't sit back here and do nothing, because we'll be on the bus going to wherever they're sending all these folks. So you need to get up off of your laurels and think, oh, that's not happening to me. It's happening to all of us.
All right.
Okay, I have the first announcement, and we do have several announcements, but I do have the first one. And this one it should have come out on the Tuesday Forum website along with the announcement for these ladies. But Congresswoman Alma S. Adams is inviting you to attend a day of action to save Social Security. And that is today at 2 o'clock. And I would hope that all of us would try to come out there, because at some point in all of our lives, we're going to look for Social Security, right? Because if you have a job, you are paying into it, and you want to get back what you put into it. Okay, so it is today at 2 o'clock at the Charlotte Social Security Field Office, which is 2201 Coronation Boulevard. Okay, and that's 28227. That's 2201 Coronation Boulevard, 28227. So we really need you to come and to this press conference. And she's going to have other Charlotte-Mecklenburg leaders in the fight to protect Social Security from Elon Musk's doge.
I'm gonna be there.
He doesn't need Social Security, right? So he doesn't care about it. That's my opinion. Okay. Okay, we have other announcements. I think Carlene has one.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. Most of us know in this room, the Great West Side Fish Fry is on April 26th, a little under 2 weeks away. We also know, again, kind of in the vein of what Ms. Mary just said, in an anti-DEI world, Black forward-leaning nonprofits aren't seeking or don't have access to the funding as we did just months ago. However, I'm taking a page out of the book of Ms. Mary Bethune. And we got our fundraiser fans. Look at that. Boom. If you don't know, we are having the Ultimate Line Dance World Championship, and the feature is boots on the ground. So we have our $10 habitual line stepper clap hand. Look at that. So yes, so please support Applesauce Group with your exclusive habitual line stepper. If you are a fan of the Chappelle Show, you remember Charlie Murphy saying about one Mr. Rick James that he was a habitual line stepper. He stepped over lines habitually, but you can get yours right here, AppleSauceGroup.org.
Can I go next? This is just a reminder, tomorrow's meeting, April 16th, about the co-op on the west side, 5 Points Plaza. That meeting, 5:30, refreshments, 6 o'clock, the meeting will start on time, and then we finish by 7:15. It's at Mosaic Village at the very top. We call it the Skyline. Tomorrow, April 16th, is the last day for this phase of the meeting about the co-op and affordable housing for seniors.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to both of you. And my party, I want to say, Superman is not coming. We are Superman. And the kids are out there depending on us to be there for them. Next week, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools is coming. Dr. Medlock, who is one of the chief assistant superintendents, will be here along with the community.
Wait a minute, hold up, there's a phone.
Go ahead. Okay, Community and Partnership Department. So please come out. And I know Winston had a question, and I hope he'll bring that. And also, we have a new initiative where we are going out to individual communities, meeting with them to let you know, CMS, to answer questions you might have and to find out how we can engage and collaborate. That is very important to us. I was at a meeting Saturday. We had 19 leaders from various communities. Dot was one, Mary was one, Winston and Barb's. So please, if you want us to come and visit your community, please, Mary.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Gary was there. Anyway, thank you. Oh, Shay was there. A lot of people were there. Darnell was there.
Okay, since he forgot one more, my dad forgot one more question about the face ride. Sort of in the end, I'm gonna be singing and dancing on the stage.
Well, this is just a reminder to everybody who is 50 and older. Okay, 50 and older. Our Social Security is on the line. I'm getting ready to be 57, and my Medicaid and Medicare is on the line. So if there's any way that you can advocate for those who are marginalized and underserved and their voices are not being heard, let's make sure that we write our Congress, write our city council, our county commissioners, to let them know how important it is to keep these things going, because if they take it away, a lot of times people who need services like myself, we won't be able to get them. So if you know that you are getting a check or you're getting services for those who are 70 and older, or even my age and older, please make sure that you follow up. Make sure that you are right there with everybody in the trenches, because they're taking things away, and I can't afford stuff to be taken away because I still need to be here. I can't afford the medicines that are going on. You know what I'm saying? These prices are out the roof. Y'all better pay attention to the things that are going on. It's cute to go to a fish fry. It's cute to go to events and things of that nature. I apologize for this phone, y'all. But please pay attention, be involved, get involved with everything that you can when we're talking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, services that we really, truly need. So I stand before you because I may look like I got it going on, but believe me, I need mine. I don't know about y'all, but I need it, okay? Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've already announced, please come out.
All right, any more announcements? Mr. Combs?
It is an impossible mission, seemingly. Don, I want to do that story. I remember doing the 50th anniversary with you. I'm going to try to find that video. And I would like to talk to you after this to get more information. But as y'all know, I'm a freelance writer too. And if anybody got some really good stories, I love stories. And especially controversy, because that's what people read.
Any other announcements? Okay. Also, let me just say this before we go. It is a wonder how we have so much questions about black anatomy and tails when we have so many light-skinned people as well. I don't know how that happens, but I guess well, I know, but but yeah, yes. With that said, we will see you next week for another exciting edition of Tuesday Morning Forum, where we are breaking barriers and talking to history makers. Come next week for another exciting guest, who will be CMS. I was going to get, well, it's CMS. We're talking about the schools, y'all. Please show up. These are our babies. See you next week. Dr. Thomas, play us out.
Oh.